Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Let's program where we talk to reporters and writers and editors and all different people who are putting stuff out so you can kind of see what they're thinking about when they put stuff out in the borough of the Bronx. And in our second segments, we usually do artists or performers of some sort. We have a wonderful college professor who's a poet as well, and she has a wonderful poem to read for you about the borough of the Bronx. But let's get started with Alex Krales, who's a reporter for the Mount Haven Herald and the Hunts Point Express. Nice to see you, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
So you, let's say you're from New York, right? That was what I was to understand. So as opposed to some other people that we have who come to New York and cover the Bronx, you are a New Yorker. What's it been like covering the borough of the Bronx?
It's amazing. There's so much going on, especially with the 50th anniversary of hip hop. Tons of community groups who are working on the ground in directly affected um, spaces, and it's just great. There's a lot going on in the Bronx.
It's been eye-opening, and of course, you're down there in the South Bronx. Now, you're part of the Craig Newmark School of Journalism, right? Because that's really the paper that's really the college, the graduate program that fuels both the Mount Haven Herald and the Huntsville Express, right?
Yes.
Right. How's that been? They treating you okay?
Yeah, it's a great program. CUNY is amazing, and
Mhm.
they just really have us doing on the ground work right now.
And when else do you get to not only get your byline, but you get to be on TV too? That's pretty good. Anyway, let's talk about. You wrote about. Now we know that the city is breaking up the Rikers jail, and four of the boroughs are going to have a neighborhood jail, if you will, or a borough jail. And the new Bronx jail is on Concord Avenue between 141st and 142nd Streets. So let's talk about your article that said there may be some issues with nearby homes as regards to construction. What did you find?
I spoke to a number of residents living on Concord Avenue who have been experiencing vibrations from the construction of the foundation, namely Walter Nash, who has been living in his home since the 1960s, says that his home has incurred damage because of the vibrations from the line.
And as I understand, certainly from the article, that it was a significant amount of damage. In other words, he believes that the construction, the blasting, or whatever they're doing over there is causing his home to have some issues. And there are other people on the block saying similar things.
Yes, a number of residents said that the tremors are affecting their quality of life and that they don't want to live next to a jail. I will
Well,
say that the Department of Design and Construction, who's overseeing this project, said that his building in particularly was not structurally sound. And
we're talking about Walter Nash's building.
yeah, so they said that the
Okay,
building
so
was,
let me just ask you. So it's not a private home; it's a building,
yeah, it's a three-story building like
three
many
stories.
of the older buildings in New York City that you'll find around these borough-based jail sites in the
Mhm.
Bronx and in Chinatown. So a lot of them were built in the early 1900s, 1930s, and are subject to incurring damage. I think that's something we, as New Yorkers, are really experience. We see the vast changes in our neighborhood, and when we're seeing these massive structures go up, we have to be aware of how it could affect older buildings and our elders living in those older buildings.
So here's the question. So now we should mention that for people who read the article, like I did, that admission from the Department of Design and Construction from DDC uh, was not in there because they got to you after the publication of the article.
And they did send a number of screenshots, Google images, and older records that claim that Walter Nash's house was unstable. But I think the larger question for us in New York communities is how we're going to take care of older structures and our elders in those communities as we see these huge projects go up. And I
So
know
no, go ahead, finish what you're saying because I was going to respond.
there's a number of community organizations on the ground who have been really diligent in giving feedback to the mayor's office in particular. I know that there was a neighborhood advisory committee that was specifically trying to work out some of these problems ahead of time. and organizations like Bronx Connect, Halt Solitary, Jails Action Coalition. They're all really working directly with affected community members.
So here's the thing. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing of it. Let's just say that, which I would presume it's true, that the building was structurally unsound. Does that mean it's okay to blast in that area and say, well, what can you do? It's not a good building. Or do you not blast, or you take precautions, or you fortify the buildings before you do it? So, you know what I'm saying? It's like they're saying, well, it was not a structurally sound building, so the heck with them. You know what I mean? It's like, if you know that you're in a neighborhood with old buildings, then either you don't do the construction that could affect those old buildings, or you evaluate the buildings beforehand. You add some improvements that'll, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Just seems a little odd that they would say, well, it's structurally unsound. Well, it's structurally unsound, then you don't blast next door and give it a problem, especially if people are living there.
yeah, and in New York, I think a lot of people agree that no question Rikers has to be closed because of how dangerous and violent the facility is. How many people who have died there recently, and I think that while these borough-based jails are being constructed, this is the main concern for the community: is how we're going to take care to make sure that the neighborhoods and the people who have been living in their neighborhoods their whole lives are still able to carry on in their communities.
I mean, it can be so complex. The whole idea of doing environmental impact statements before you build would be to have in the impact statement, we are aware that these are old buildings, and either they're going to put ballasts or other things to stop the noise from affecting, or the vibrations from affecting those buildings, or you handle it in a different way. But you don't, after the fact, say, well, they're old buildings. That should have been in the documentation before they started the construction, it would seem to me. Um, the other thing which is of concern is that, which you reported, is that people don't want to live near a jail. Um, is there going to be enough security around it? In other words, I guess there'll be people visiting, and I don't know. Does the presence of a incarceration facility mean that around the incarceration facility there are there's unsavory people? I mean, do those attract crime? I don't know what the record is on those kinds of things, but that would be a concern.
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of people don't want to live next to a jail, especially considering the culture of cruelty that we are always seeing reported on the news.
Ah,
You have a website called Beyond Rikers that outlines the plans and to build the jail, and also what are going to be um, other additions to the neighborhood, other social infrastructure and investments that
yeah.
are going to be made that were combined with this plan. So I would encourage everyone to check that out if they're interested in the specifics. I mean, Department of Design and Construction also said they did have sensors around the neighborhood, but I think that, as we've seen in the case that I wrote about, Walter Nash, we have to be even more sensitive when we are doing massive construction in areas that have older infrastructure and also where our elders are living.
Yeah, I think there's no question about it. To me, the answer to that goes back to the planning stage, and that is because the city and other entities try to skirt the idea of environmental impact statements, and also skirt the idea of doing ULURP when necessary. All those kinds of things. If they're done beforehand, then everybody knows what they're supposed to get, so to speak. One other thing I just want to mention, just got about a minute. You did a story about the lack of transparency and people protesting the lack of transparency at Rikers Jail. I mean, people die and they're not going to tell anybody. To me, that is just not acceptable. But apparently, that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, and community groups like Jails Action Coalition and Freedom Agenda have been working with directly affected families and communities to make sure that we can try and provide great basic human rights, especially for people who are in custody. They are calling for the immediate shutdown of Rikers Island.
Right.
And these borough-based jails have been proposed as an alternative. But my question is what we're going to do to make sure that everyone in custody is
taken care of, and we don't just perpetuate the biggest problems. Listen, I guess the good news is we have a reporter that really cares and a reporter that really wants to do the right thing, and Alex Krales, the reporter for Mount Haven Herald and Hunts Point Express. I'm guessing you're going to be covering this straight through.
Yes, I will continue. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
We love having you, and we'll have you back again. Okay, that will do it for this segment. What we'll do is we'll take a short break. When we come back, as I said, we have a wonderful Bronx poet who's well known, and she's going to read an extraordinary piece about the borough of the Bronx.
STEM is everywhere, like here, behind the scenes of The Walking Dead.
When we break down clothes, we tumble it with trisodium phosphate, rock salt, and dish detergent.
We stitched together images of our model and created a 3D set that could be walked through in a VR headset.
We're able to turn 12 walkers into 1,000 walker hordes.
STEM can create new worlds on and off the screen. What will you make with STEM? Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
¿Qué color? Perfecto, mijo.
Gracias. Thank you.
What's wrong, mijo?
Donating to a pet's medical care is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. And I am thrilled because in some ways I'm related to this person. Professor Mariposa Fernández is with us. Nice to have you with us. And I say related because I was an English major at Lehman College, and you have been recently appointed as a professor in the English department at Lehman College. Es verdad, true?
Es la verdad that beginning August 25th of 2023, I will begin a lectureship in the Department of English.
And
I will be teaching creative writing.
And why is this a nice extension of all the multitudes of publications and work that you've done?
I'm thrilled. I am so happy because I've been teaching as a CUNY professor for a long time, since 2017. And I have been teaching creative writing as a teaching artist in New York City. I've been doing this for a while.
So this, let me fill in the blanks. So, and this is a chance for you to share what you know, what you learned, and help other people do what you believe. Right? Am I right?
Right on, exactly. And the Bronx is my home, so I
I'm
love.
doing it here. I want to just read some of the credits. There's pages of them. Puerto Rican poet and performance artist. Um, been featured on HBO on the series Habla Ya, on the documentary Americanos Latino Life in the United States, as well as programming in PBS, Lifetime TV, and BET networks. I just wanted to be clear for everybody. But what inspires you? What motivates you to do all of this work and get keep teaching and performing and expressing and finding new ways to get your messages out there? What inspires you?
So many things inspire me. A quote that comes to mind right now is one by Julia Cameron, who wrote that our creativity is a gift from the creator, and sharing it with the world is our gift back. And I love working with young people. I think that there's so much going on in the world right now, so much going on in our city, and I'm inspired to work with the next generation of writers and to create a space where people, especially our young people here in the Bronx, can find their own voice.
One of the things that we discussed and you were very clear about, and I certainly would support, is the importance of not only English departments, but Lehman College's English department and departments of humanities. You passed along to me an article that I had not seen and couldn't believe, and that was a New Yorker article that talked about the end of the English major. Your point has been that may be somewhere, but not at Lehman College. So talk to me a little bit about the importance, and I'm going to add something after you're done, of being an English major and why Lehman's English department and humanities programs are so important and successful.
Well, I think that during the pandemic, we saw that when everyone was forced into remote learning and into quarantine, that virtual cultural spaces were the first places that people turned to, including open mics and virtual poetry readings. And what we saw at Lehman was an increase in students declaring English as a major and minor. And I think that that also comes out of traditions that I'm a part of, like the Nuyorican poetry tradition and the Black arts tradition. For years, going back to the 90s, going back to my own college years when I was a student at New York University, I curated, and we didn't use that word back then. I hosted, I organized, and I hosted.
That's
yes.
Right. So go ahead, but you curated.
I hosted and I organized open mics. Going back, this is back in the day, going back to when I was a student myself.
Right.
And I wrote in secret. I would write in my diary. And it wasn't until my first year of college that I recited poetry before a live audience, and it really changed my life. And I think that to create that space here in New York City, in the Lower East Side, and in Harlem, what my theory is that has helped to contribute to making poetry, making English, becoming an English lit major sexy.
Making it sexy. I hadn't thought of that. From my own experience, I mean, obviously I've made my career in broadcasting, both radio and television. I learned language, and I learned how to use language, and I learned how, especially taking English literature classes at Lehman College, I learned how to look at the world. So if I read a book, whether it be Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man, just thinking it's probably up here, my college books are probably right up here, or one of those publications, one of those books, I would read that and then walk down the block and see the world, and then get on the microphone and try and relate that. And so even though people say, well, what can you do as an English major? You probably could do anything that uses language, communications, publicity, public relations, be a politician. I mean, there's 100 things you can do if you can do this, which I learned as an English major at Lehman College. So there's my sale. Does that work for you? That's good.
That works for me. I would love for you to come and speak to my students. And
you could do that anytime you want.
Yeah, that would be really great.
The television is right there. Talk to me about your writing a little bit. Do you write every day? Do you write poetry every day? Do you walk down the block and see something and then run home and say, "Oh my goodness, I got to do this right now"? Or I'm always interested in an artist's muse. So explain that if you will.
I think that a large part of writing is thinking. So I am engaged in the process of writing every day, even if I'm not physically engaging in the act of writing a poem. I think that it's important to contemplate and to ponder and to allow our minds to be with the world, with our observations. And I think that is a huge part of writing.
And so do you write every day? I mean, we're always thinking.
I think I do write every day.
Wow.
I may not, but there are times that I think it's important and times that I focus and I'm more disciplined or more intentional in my writing. So I'll write free write in my journal. I think that,
and you know, your explanation way back a couple of minutes ago, that when the pandemic hit, that's what people went to because there was nothing else there. You couldn't go to work, you know, you could go for a walk, but you couldn't go out. You couldn't sit in a bar. You couldn't do anything. So then people went to what they know best, which is themselves, and certainly the Bronx and their culture, because we have such, you know, diverse and interesting cultures here, and also. I got to say something. I got to do something. And so if you say spoken word exploded, then who could deny that? Listen, before we run out of time, we want you to read something for us so people can get a sample of what you think about and what you write about. You said you selected something for us. So ladies and gentlemen, Mariposa Fernández, the floor is yours. What do you got?
Thank you so much. I have something. It's not specific to hip hop. We are celebrating the 50th anniversary or the 50th birthday of hip hop, as well as the 50th anniversary of the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. But it's about the culture and my memories of growing up in the Bronx, and it's called Bronx Cicadas. People can find it in a book called Swagger and Tenderness, the South Bronx Portraits by John Ahern and Rigoberto Torres. It's in the book.
I should mention that we did an edition of Bronx Talk in the museum, and that book was held up. I didn't realize your work was in there. So
yeah, I have a poem in the book.
It closes the deal for us. So there you go. Go ahead.
Okay.
And let's hear it.
Bronx Cicadas, for my brother Al and the Boulevard. In the Bronx of my childhood, where we walked down the hill on East 213, past the big old oak tree on the corner, diagonal from the old abandoned Victorian houses on Carpenter, creepy chipped blue paint fading watercolor against the sky, where the scary dog in the alleyway behind the gated fence barked at us each and every time. Down to the boulevard, to the block, where all the colors in the world lived, where the green leaves hung low and luscious, where our hearts were never heavy, where the river smelled of its own muddy water, where it sparkled green, like the Bronx River does, especially on rainy days. Murky brown, lime green, foamy circles, reflection of blue sky, the universe between the river and the boulevard, that boulevard. Bronx Park Boulevard, park of many playgrounds. Rosewood and Shoelace Park, Park of the bocce courts where the old Italian men played wearing brown fedoras, crispy white shirts, and brown pants held up by suspenders. Park of the cobblestoned horseshoe that still stands. Park of mystery morning dew on fresh grass. Park of the under the Williams Bridge spooky echo underpass that smelled of urine, where years ago before our time a farm stood. Park of the oak trees, weeping willows, and scent of pine, where we gathered fallen trees and acorns in the fall, pine cones in the winter, and dandelion wishes all summer long, where we chased fireflies and scraped our knees, where we watched fireworks explode in the black sky on the 4th of July, where we had snowball fights in our own winter wonderland, went sledding down the hill onto 19th Street after being pulled for blocks by my big brother. My brother's park, where he hung out with his boys, where they broke night, dreaming in the whispers of our river. On cold winter nights, under stars and bare trees, standing on wooden benches above the packed snow. Done gathered all the dead Christmas trees for smoky boulevard bonfires, burning old wood where new trees were sure to grow. Dark winter nights soon to blossom into pink and white dogwood, sunny spring sunrise with radiating glow. The constant river flow, and the humming sound of speeding cars on higher ground in tow on the Bronx River Parkway. Zoom! Ah, summer again, sunny, hot, and hazy. Time for boom boxes and mixtapes in the park where the Boulevard Lions played touch football with their ripped jeans, curly froze, and long feathered hair flying in the wind, where we chased white buttercup butterflies and hung on the chain link fence as we marveled at the brothers playing basketball with their picked out froze, where we got pumped on the swings in the playground on 219, sailed on wooden seesaws, chipped yellow paint carved up fresh graffiti layups on concrete walls, climbed old school monkey bars, where we jumped rope, roller skated, and ate Italian ices, ran wild through the sprinklers and played hopscotch, where my brother taught us how to ride a bike in the stomping grounds reveling of his youth, music of the boulevard, through the dog days of summer sun rays, where the sound of a Bronx day rattled long and loud like mysterious maracas in the trees.
All right, there we go. What, as I was listening to it, that's my hometown. That's what it is. That's what I think about, and that's what it is. Mariposa Fernández, Professor Mariposa Fernández, thank you so much. And good luck at Lehman. I'm going to stop by. If you want me to pop into the class, we will do that. And we'll see you around town. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Gary.
Great. So that will do it for our program this evening. And you know what we always say, if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, I'll be here next week.